You've probably heard this before. Attachment style is formed in childhood. It's who you are. And if you've spent any time in therapy, in self-help, or in the comment section of any psychology video online, you've probably started to believe it. But here's the question almost nobody asks. What if that's not the end of the story? What if the nervous system that learned fear can actually learn safety? Not by thinking your way there, not by understanding your childhood, but through something the research calls earned security. And today, we're going to look at the exact neuroscience of how that happens. Earned security isn't a feeling, it's a classification. In attachment research, specifically in the adult attachment interview first developed by Mary Main in the 1980s, researchers found something they didn't expect. Some adults who had genuinely difficult, chaotic, or neglectful childhoods scored as securely attached. Not because they'd forgotten what happened, not because they'd minimized it, but because they developed what researchers called a coherent narrative about their own lives. They could look at their past clearly, without collapsing into it, and without running from it. That's earned security, and it is neurologically distinct from never having been wounded in the first place. Here's where neuroscience enters the picture. For most of the 20th century, the dominant assumption in science was that the brain stops developing in early adulthood, that the architecture was fixed. Then came neuroplasticity. The discovery, confirmed across decades of research, that the brain physically reorganizes itself in response to experience. New connections form, old pathways weaken, the structure changes. And this includes the systems most responsible for your attachment patterns. The amygdala, which fires your fear and threat detection. The prefrontal cortex, which regulates your emotional response. The insula, which reads the internal state of your body. All three are plastic. All three can be rewired. Not overnight, not by insight alone, but through specific, repeated, embodied experience. But if the brain can change, why does it feel like yours won't? Here's the painful honesty. Your nervous system isn't broken. It's conservative. The implicit memory system, the one that stores your emotional reflexes, was designed by evolution to hold on to threat information with a death grip. Because in a literal survival context, the cost of forgetting a danger is death. The cost of remembering a danger that no longer exists is just discomfort. So your nervous system chose discomfort every time. And that means when someone safe shows up in your life, someone who doesn't withdraw, doesn't punish, doesn't leave, your system doesn't automatically say safe. It says unfamiliar. And unfamiliar to an anxious nervous system feels like threat. Safety can feel threatening. That's not weakness. That's the wound. So how does earned security actually happen? The research points to three distinct pathways. Pathway 1, coherent narrative. This is what the adult attachment interview measures, the ability to tell your own story, including the painful parts, with clarity, with continuity, without dissociating from it or being consumed by it. This is what good therapy builds, not just insight, narrative coherence. Pathway 2, corrective relational experience. This is the most powerful and the most underestimated. A relationship with a therapist, a partner, a friend, where the old wound gets activated and then something different happens. You reach for the phone, and instead of silence, there's a response. You pull away, and instead of abandonment, there's a calm return. Repetition of that sequence, over time, literally edits the implicit memory. Pathway 3, somatic regulation. Because the wound lives in the body, healing has to reach the body. Breathwork, movement, practices that train the nervous system toward regulation, not by thinking about it, but by doing it enough times that the body starts to believe it. Let's make this concrete, because rewiring is an abstraction, and abstractions don't help at 2 a.m. when someone hasn't texted back. What nervous system change actually looks like in real life is this. The trigger still fires. Someone goes quiet. Your chest still tightens. But the window between trigger and reaction gets longer. Where it used to be 0 seconds before your hands move toward your phone, now there's 1 second, then 5. Then you notice the sensation in your chest, and you can name it. Then, months later, you notice the sensation, name it, feel it, and let it pass. That's not the absence of the wound. That's the window of tolerance expanding. The amygdala still fires, but the prefrontal cortex comes online faster, and the insula, your body sensing system, becomes more accurate, less flooded, more precise. Healing isn't the trigger disappearing. It's the time between trigger and choice getting longer. Of the 3 pathways, corrective relational experience is both the most powerful and the hardest to access. Because here's the paradox. The people with the most anxious or avoidant attachment are often the least able to let a safe relationship actually land. The anxiously attached person who finally meets someone consistent often can't stop testing them, can't stop waiting for the withdrawal. The avoidantly attached person who finally meets someone who gives them space often pushes for distance before they can be left. The wound protects itself. But here's what research on earned secure adults consistently shows. The turning point wasn't a perfect relationship. It was a relationship where rupture was followed by repair, where the cycle broke. Not a relationship without conflict, a relationship where conflict didn't end in abandonment or engulfment. That pattern, rupture, then repair, is one of the most neurologically significant experiences a human being can have. If you have stayed this far, it means you are already seeing the changes happen. And don't forget to join Wired for Intense, the unquiet mind. And for 16 years, we have worked with the science of emotional survival, specifically the ways our nervous system learned to protect us from love, long before we were old enough to understand whether the protection is still necessary. Here's what we won't do. Tell you this is fast. Earned security in the research tends to emerge over years, not weeks, not a single breakthrough conversation. The implicit memory system, the one holding the wound, learns through repetition, hundreds of safe moments before the body starts to update. That's not a reason to despair. It's a reason to stop evaluating your progress after 3 therapy sessions and 1 uncomfortable dinner. What the research also shows is that the process is non-linear. You will feel stuck. You will feel like you've regressed. You will have the same argument in year 3 that you had in year 1. And then, something different will happen. A moment where you catch yourself, where you choose differently, where the window opens just wide enough. Those moments don't feel like healing. They feel like nothing. They feel like almost. But they are the mechanism. They are how the brain builds new architecture. Slowly, stubbornly, and undeniably. So here's where we land. Your attachment style was not a sentence. It was a survival strategy. And survival strategies can be updated, not by deciding to update them, but by accumulating enough experience that the nervous system finally believes the threat has passed. Neuroscience says you can change, not metaphorically, structurally. The question is what experiences you're giving your nervous system to learn from. Here's what we want you to sit with this week. At what point did you realize that a relationship, not insight, not information, was the thing that actually started to shift something in you? Drop your answer in the comments. You don't have to explain everything. Just tell us where you are. And if you want to understand the full science of how memories hold attachment patterns, not just your body, we have made a complete breakdown on the channel. Because once you understand where the wound actually lives, you know exactly where to start.